Chapter 9. At that time, King Antiochus, humiliated and deeply troubled, had to retreat from Persia. He had intended to capture the Persian capital and plunder the temples there. When the locals learned of this, they organized themselves against him with great force and defeated him and his army. When he saw that he had been defeated, he returned with his army in shame. When Antiochus arrived near Batnoth, he heard what had happened to Nicanor and Timothy. He was shocked and terrified. He was filled with rage and determined to do to Jews what he had done in Persia. He called his charioteer and ordered him to make all arrangements to go to Jerusalem immediately. He said, "I will destroy the city of Jerusalem of Jews and make it a place for the Gentiles." But the judgment of the Lord, the mighty God of Israel, suddenly fell upon him. He suffered a terrible blow that could not be seen from the outside. He who, while he desired to carry out all his orders, was seized with severe pains in his stomach and intestines. He who tortured many with terrible tortures and whipped the stomachs of others, received the vengeance of justice. Despite all this, he was filled with insolence and fury, and he commanded his charioteer to drive his chariot as fast as he could against the Jews with a fury like a blazing fire. He fell down in great pain from the rushing chariot. All his limbs were crushed. The one who a short time ago thought he could even stop the waves of the sea, now boasting that he could even move the peaks of mountains, because of his power, which is greater than all men, has been thrown down. The power of God has been openly displayed to all. The pain of that wicked man was so severe that worms crept out of his body. The stench was so terrible, even his soldiers couldn't bear that. While he was still alive, his flesh was falling off in pieces. No one stood close to him owing to the stench his body emitted, who in his boast but a short while before said he could command even the stars in the sky. And after so much, he realized his insignificance. When he collapsed, he turned to the knowledge of truth. He was in great pain and suffering from the blows from heaven. For when he saw that he was in great pain and suffering, felt right that he should be completely subject to God. He said, "Man, since he is mortal, should not even think against God." That wicked man prayed to God. He said of the Jews, "I will build a city and fortify it, about which I said, I will go up and destroy it, and make it a dwelling place for the Gentiles. There will be no one to even bury the Jews. They will become prey to birds of the air and beasts of the earth." I said I would make their women and children orphans. I will adorn the holy temple that I plundered before with all kinds of ornaments. I'll provide many more vessels for worship and bear the expenses of your sacrifices from my own resources. In addition to all this, I would become a Jew. Wherever I go there, I would proclaim the glory of God's reign everywhere. Despite all this, his pains were not relieved because God's righteous judgment had already overtaken him. When he was disappointed, he wrote a petition to the Jews which said, "Antiochus, king and governor, to the Jews of my own city and my beloved, I pray to the God in heaven and implore him, may you and your children have peace, tranquility, and health. My hope is in him and his great mercy. When I became so ill, I always remembered your case, that honor and great comfort would come upon you. For my heart was burning with love for you, and before I left Persia and arrived here, I became ill. I have been suffering from a very serious and painful illness. I wanted to do what was necessary for you first and foremost, because I don't know what will happen to me. I have hope that I will recover from this disease. My father, before he set off on a journey to distant lands, had announced who would succeed him. This was perchance something bad may befall. His subjects would know who would succeed him, and would not fight among themselves for the position. I have also informed the nobles of my kingdom, who are engaged in the affairs of the kingdom and observing the occurrences, that I have appointed my son Antiochus as king. When I was traveling to distant places, I often entrusted him to you as well. I have written all this to you, and I beg you again and again to remember the good things I have shown you all. He will be humble and loving towards you, who agree with me in all things. Antiochus, the murderer, the wicked, and the blasphemer, who had tortured many to the utmost, died in a foreign land in a mountainous region with great pain, torture, and misery. When his foster father's son Philip was soon to reach there with his body, fearing his son Antiochus, fled to Egypt to Ptolemy, the son of Philometor. Chapter 10. Maccabee and his companions captured the temple and the city with the help of God who was with them. The altars and temples that had been built by pagans along the streets were demolished. The temple was cleansed. He built another altar, burned the stones in the fire, took the fire of them, and after a gap of 2 years offered sacrifices and offerings. They had made the lamps, the lampstands, the incense bowls, and the showbread. After they had done all this, they prostrated themselves and prayed that they be not tormented and afflicted any longer, and they be not punished except mercifully for their sins, and they be not handed over to the uncircumcised, wicked, and blasphemous nations. They were fortunate enough to purify the temple on the same day that the pagans had defiled it, on the 25th of the month of Konunkadim. They celebrated this feast with joy for 8 days, just like the Feast of Tabernacles every year. A few days before the Feast of Tabernacles, they lived in the mountains and caves, living like animals. They took up ivy branches and sang a hymn of praise to the one who had brought them salvation, and praised the one who strengthened them to clean and sanctify his dwelling place. The Jews unanimously decided that all should celebrate it annually. The death of Antiochus, who was called Epiphanes. Let us also speak about that wicked son Antiochus Epicurus. Let me briefly describe the many disasters caused by the wars. When the monarchy began in his father's place, Lucius, who had previously been the governor of the Syrian and Phoenician territories, was appointed to the administrative affairs. Ptolemy, whose name was Magdan, was friendly with the Jews. He was deeply moved by their suffering. He wanted to live in peace with them, but some of his friends came to Epicurus and accused him of wrongdoing. Philometor had entrusted him with Cyprus, but he refused and went to Antiochus Epiphanes, whereupon they called him a traitor. Therefore he had no honor or respect in the kingdom. Consequently, he committed suicide by drinking poison. In his place, the leadership of the government was taken over by Georgia. He gathered many conquerors to his side, and they fought the Jewish wars. Edomites joined him. They attacked the nearby fortresses. The Jews were greatly persecuted. They also welcomed those fleeing from Jerusalem. They prepared to fight Israel. Maccabee and his companions cried out to God for help incessantly. They rushed to some Edomite fortresses and fought them bravely. They defeated them with their strength. They killed those who fought to protect their fortresses. They killed 20,000 people, and as many as 9,000 fled. They entered two important and strong fortresses. Judah Maccabee continued to go to crucial places. He appointed Naaman, Joseph, Sakai, and many others to conquer the forts. As soon as Maccabee left the place, some of those who were with him, enticed by money, took bribes from those in the fort and took away 70,000 pieces of silver. Some of them agreed to flee. When Maccabee learned of the matter, he called together the leaders of the people and killed all those who had sold their brothers for money, who had given their consent to their enemies, and who had acted as spies. In a short time he captured the forts with a small number of men and killed 20,000 people in both forts. Having been defeated by the Jews for the first time, Timothy gathered a large and powerful army of Gentiles. Having come to Jerusalem with soldiers and cavalry from Asia, he planned to destroy Judea and conquer the entire city. When Maccabees heard that he was coming, he threw dust on his head, wore sackcloth, and cried out to God. They fell prostrate before the altar, that God be reconciled to them, and that he stand as their helper, and fight against their enemies, and stand against those who hated them, as the law says. After prayers, they took up weapons and set out with great courage. They were at peace in the beginning of the war. The two sides began fighting at sunrise. These relied on God the Lord, who would grant them victory and salvation, and the others on their commanders. As the battle intensified, their enemies had a vision. They saw 5 magnificent and beautiful horsemen supporting the Jews with their horses, with golden bridles. They saw Maccabee standing in their midst, their weapons sheltering him, protecting him from all the blows of their weapons. Their enemies were shooting arrows and spears, and when they saw all this, their eyes were mesmerized. All their strength faded. These destroyed over 20,000 infantry and 600 cavalry of those. Timotheus fled to the prison of Caravos, who had been previously ruler there to the fortified Gazara fortress. Judah Maccabee and his companions fought bravely against the fortress for 4 days. The inhabitants of the fort, who were confident about its strength, were speaking wicked, outrageous, and filthy words that made fun of the supporters of Judah Maccabee. On the 5th day, when dawn was approaching, 10 young men who were with Maccabee, incensed by their wicked words, were enraged and, like ferocious beasts, rushed into the fort and killed everyone they saw before them. They set fire to those false speakers, and some others broke down the fort gates. So they entered the city and captured it. They found Timotheus hiding in a pit. They killed him and his brother Corovus and Apollonius. After they had wrought all this, they sang songs of praise to God, who had shown mercy to Israel and given them victory. Chapter 11. After a while, Lucius, a member of the royal family and the king's steward, learned of all this and was furious. He came to fight the Jews with 80,000 infantry and a large number of cavalry. He decided to make the city of Jerusalem a place of residence for the Gentiles, to tax the temple like other temples, and to abolish the high priesthood. He wanted to show the glory and righteousness of God. He did not remember the glory and righteous judgment of God. He became arrogant, bragging about an army of 10,000, a cavalry of thousands, and elephants. He entered Judea, approached the fortress. He encamped in a large plain about 10,000 and 5 stadia from Jerusalem, and began to persecute them. When they heard that he had begun to plunder and conquer, they cried out with tears and prayed to God, to his good angel, to save Israel. Maccabee was the first to take up weapons. He encouraged his brothers to help their brothers who were in danger from the enemy. Together they bravely set out on their journey. As they approached Jerusalem, they saw a hero standing on a horse dressed in white, with his golden armor shining and his swords outstretched. Immediately they raised their voices together, praising the merciful Heavenly One, and became confident and courageous, believing that they could not only overthrow men but also break down ferocious beasts and iron gates. They charged like lions at their enemies, confident that God would be merciful to them and would be their helper. They defeated 11,000 infantry and 16,000 cavalry, and the rest fled. Many were cut down and fled naked, and Lucius himself escaped with great disgrace. When he came to his senses, he remembered what happened to them and said that the Hebrews would never be defeated because a mighty God was with them. He kept the alliance he had sent to them. He sent men to them and begged them for a friendly alliance. He said that they would also force a king to befriend them. Maccabees agreed to everything that Lucius requested, thinking that it would be good for the Jews. The king approved everything that Maccabees had written to Lucius. The letter of Lucius to the Jews is as follows: From Lucia, peace be unto Jews. John and Absalom, whom you sent, delivered to me the letters. They have informed me of the things which were told in them, and of the things which I should testify before the king. I have told them that the king has waived off everything that needs to be waived off. Therefore, if you will keep your alliance with us, I'll be the cause of everything that is beneficial to you. The things you have sent will be carried out according to your wishes. The king's letter arrived on the 24th of 148th year of Teshrin Hoi, from King Antiochus to brother Lucius. I wish that my reign may be free from rebellion, since my father has gone to the presence of the gods. Therefore I wrote about the interest of the Jews. We have heard that they were unwilling to agree with my father's opinion of art, and that they desired to adhere to their own law, and that their law should be granted to them. Our desire is that these people may live without strife and fear, that their temple may be given to them, and that they may practice according to the laws and customs of their fathers. Therefore it may prove beneficial unto you to send men and give them the right hand of pledge. When they understand our attitude towards them, they'll be able to do all their activities with joy and peace. The king's message to the Jewish people from King Antiochus to the Jewish leaders and the rest of the Jews. We wish you peace and prosperity. We have heard from Menelaus that you desire to live with peace in your work and affairs, and that you be guided by your law. We have also extended our right hand to you and forgiven your sins. We declare a general amnesty for those who return before the 30th of the month of Nisan. Therefore let the Jews continue to follow their own law as before, and let no one harm them in any way. We have sent Menelaus to inform you of all these things. May you be in peace. The message sent by the Romans to the Jews on the 15th day of the month of Nisan, 148 AD, together with Candace Mammius and Titus Menelaus, the elders of Rome, write to the Jewish people. Peace. We are very happy with the benefits that Lucius, a member of the royal family, has given you. We support everything the king has said about you. We have sent men to do all this for you and comfort you in all that you desire. We are eager to come to Antioch. Please send someone to us as soon as possible to inform us of your situation. On the 15th day of the month of Nisan, 148 AD. Chapter 12. After these things, Lucius went out to the king's presence, and the Jews returned to their work and occupation. The governors of each region, Timotheus, Hieronymus, Apollonius, son of Gani, Hieronymus Rampon, Nicanor, and the Cyprites, who joined them, they could not agree to remain silent. Jopaman did a horrific action like this. When the Jews who had been living with them were living together as one city without any enmity or quarrel, they invited them, their wives and children, to go on a journey in boat. Once they had no animosity between them, they happily agreed, thinking that they had been invited with a peaceful intention. They went into port and killed about 200 of their men, drowning them in the sea. When Judah heard of the betrayal and disaster that had befallen their people, they immediately ordered their companions to fight. He wept and prayed before God, the righteous judge, and he went to the murderers of his brothers and burned the harbor at night. They also set fire to the ships that were there, killing those lodged in them. He was planning to go against them again and destroy the city of Joppa and its inhabitants, but he received information that the inhabitants of Yamnon were scheming against the Jews who inhabited there. He went there at night and set fire to their harbor and everything there, so that the flames of his fire could be seen even in Jerusalem, 240 stadion away. From there, when they set out to confront Timos at about 9 stadion away, the Arabs fought a great battle with about 5,000 infantry soldiers and 500 cavalry. By the help of God who accompanied them, Judah and his army was victorious. When the heroes were defeated, in addition to requesting that they extend a peaceful right hand, that they were also promised to be given cattle. Reckoning that they would be beneficial in many ways, Judah made peace with them and made an alliance with them. Judah attacked a strong city surrounded by walls where many Gentiles lived. Its name was Caspa. The inhabitants of the place, emboldened in the security of their fortresses and the abundance of weapons they had stored within, mocked and insulted Judas and his companions. They were arrogantly repeating filthy, unwholesome words. Judas and his group did not fight with stones or vast schemes or with weapons made by human hands, but cried and prayed to the mighty God of the worlds, who had overturned them in the days of Joshua. Like ferocious beasts, they rushed towards the fort, overthrew it, and captured the city. By God's will, they killed them, and the entire lake, about 2 stadion wide, was filled with blood. He reached the Jewish fortress called Tubianar, about 750 miles away, and there they met Timotheus, who was helpless and without strength of armory. He had no army with him. There was only a garrison and a large strong fortress. The Maccabite leaders, Thusindos and Susipatros, went to the fort and killed the bodyguards who were there. They numbered more than 10,000. Maccabee divided his army into several divisions and appointed commanders for each division. He confronted Timotheus, who attacked them with 12,000 infantry and 2,500 cavalry men. Timotheus heard that Maccabites had sent their women, children, and possessions to a village called Karna. The village was strong and fortified, not easily captured and plundered, and the access routes to it were narrow from every side. When Judah's first army appeared, the enemies were filled with fear and panic. By the grace of God, who was shining brightly over Maccabites, the enemy army fled, each one running to his own side. So they clashed with each other, and their limbs were also injured, for they were running with their swords drawn, and Judas pursued them fiercely. He killed about 30,000 of those wicked people. Timotheus was captured by Thusindos and Susipatros. He begged them to let him live. He promised to spare the lives of his brothers and his household, many of whom were with him. They spared him alive for the lives of their brothers. Judas Maccabee went out to a place called Kanavatur Gitu, where he killed 25,000 men. Having defeated and killed them, he then attacked the fortified city of Apron, where Lucius lived. There was a large group of pagans there and strong young men. Standing in the fort, they fought bravely, using arrows, spears, and other battle weapons. Maccabee wept and prayed before God, who was able to subdue the fierce power of his enemies. He gave the city into their hands. They captured the city they entered. 25,000 people were killed there. From there they returned to Bishan, which was 600 stadia from Jerusalem. The Jews living there told them that they were living very comfortably and that others respected them. Judah and Ruth thanked them. They met them peacefully, and from there they came together to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Patera. After Pentecost, they set off to attack Givergia, the ruler of Edomites. He came against them with 3,000 infantry and 400 cavalry, and when the battle began, only a few men of Edomites were killed. Thusindos, a mighty horseman of Tubiani, grabbed his clothes and dragged Givergia with might. He wanted the criminal to be brought alive. One of his soldiers parted sides and stabbed him in the shoulder. He killed him. He was a Turk. Givergia fled to Samaria. Azariah and his men fought fiercely and killed many. Judah cried out to the mighty God for help. He stood in front, sang songs of praise in the voice of his fathers, and began to destroy his enemies. Givergia and army was defeated and fled. He left with his army and reached the city of Dulma. When Sabbath was about to begin, they purified themselves according to their customs and performed Sabbath in their respective places. The next day the people came to Judah and asked permission to take the bodies of those who had been killed in the war and bury them in the tombs of each of their fathers. It was found that each of them had hidden the gold taken from the temple in Yamnan within each of their robes. Everyone understood that this was why they all got killed and believed. Everyone praised and thanked God for the righteous judgment of God, who reveals all hidden things. All the people cried out to God, begging him not to keep account of the sin against them, which will lead to their death. The brave Judas pleaded with all the people to keep vigil of themselves and stay away from sin. He said to them, "You have seen with your own eyes what has happened to these men." He decided to collect money from all the people. He sent it off to Jerusalem to offer a sin offering for them for those killed, collecting 3,000 pieces of silver. So he acted justly and diligently because of the hope of the resurrection from the dead, and hadn't he of good hope and anticipation of the rising of dead, then praying and offering sacrifices for the dead would have been vain and impudent. He saw the reward, hope, and comfort that awaits those who die piously, and that is why he sent money to perform the atonement ceremony for the dead, so that they could receive forgiveness of their sins. Chapter 13. In 149 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, together with Lucius, who was appointed governor of all affairs, led an army of several Gentiles consisting of 10,000 foot soldiers, 5,300 cavalry, 22 elephants, and 300 chariots equipped for battle against the Jews. Menelaus also arrived and joined them, and they approached Antiochus and begged him to overthrow their country and its people. He didn't ask for their help, because he had hoped that he would ascend to the position of ruler, but God, the King of Kings, aroused of Antiochus' wrath against the guilty Menelaus, because this is the one who caused all the unpleasant events which was reported to the king by Lucius. The king ordered him to be taken to Halabi Aleppo to be killed. There was a tower 50 feet high and filled with ash. It was powered by wheels by mechanical work. Menelaus, the one who robbed the temple and was the mastermind behind all evil, was tied to it, and thus that criminal, that great evildoer, died. He was not fortunate enough to have him buried on death. He received just revenge. His death was caused by the ashes themselves, in retaliation for the evils he committed against holy altar of fire and ashes. The king was still angry and hardened against the Jews, and he thought to do even more harm to them than his father had done. Judas learned of the king's arrival and his plan, and he urged the people to stay awake day and night and to cry out to God for help and deliver them from the hands of the nations who wanted to harm them and separate them from the law, the land, and the holy temple. They prayed that they who had received a short period of relief and rest would not be made slaves again to the wicked uncircumcised. For 3 days they fasted and prayed without ceasing to the merciful God, weeping and begging. After 3 days, Judas consoled them and asked them to have food. Judas personally visited the leaders and consulted with them, saying, "With God's help, we must put everything in order before the king's army enters Judea and destroys the defenses of the city that has been captured." He placed the control of everything in the hands of God, the creator of the world. He urged his brothers to fight to the death with vigor for the law, the church, the city, the country, and the people. They were also given a slogan saying, "God's victory." Having assembled his entire army in Murium, he, taking with him the most valiant and brave young men, encamped at night at the king's residence and killed 30,000 men, including the commander of the elephant army and those with him. There was a great commotion and panic in the camp. They, however, returned from there in the morning greatly exuberant. They did all this because God's power and help was with them. When the king learned from experience the strength and courage of Jews, he decided to defeat them through cunning and deceit. He sent an army against the Jewish stronghold and attacked it, leaving them defeated. Judas sent food to those inside the fortress. A man from Judea named Rodicus revealed their secret to their enemies. He was found and killed. King returned to Bethshur, considered right hand of promise, and accepted promises. He attacked the Judean tribes and was defeated. He thought that Philip, who was appointed governor of Antioch, wanted to rebel against him. So he made peace with the Jews, submitted to them, swore an oath, and established a friendly relationship with them. He offered offerings, honored the temple with great respect, and loved the country. He received Maccabee with great kindness and appointed Hedmanidos as governor of the region from Ptolemy to Gaza. When he arrived at Ptolemy, the Ptolemies were greatly troubled and angry with him for the treaty they had made with them. They wanted to cancel that treaty. Lucius appeared before the king, answered them, convinced them, and pacified them. From there the king departed for Antioch. This was the king's arrival and departure. Chapter 14. 3 years later, Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, came against Judas and entered the port of Alos with a large and powerful army with enough weapons to conquer the whole world. For he had already killed Antiochus and the steward Lucius. Achilmos, the former high priest, was thoroughly corrupted. At the time of agreement, he was without hope. Seeing that it was impossible to even approach the altar, in the 151st year, took a golden crown and a golden casket from the temple. He also took the palm fronds and presented them to him, and he spent peacefully that day. While Alkimos was thinking that he had found an opportunity for his rebellion and wickedness, the king summoned him to the king's dais and asked him what thoughts and intentions had made the Jews gain such power. Maccabee is the leader of the so-called Jewish praise singers. They are the ones who strengthen rivalry, zeal, and war. They do not allow peace to reign in the land. Therefore, I too have abandoned the high priesthood, which is the honor of my fathers. Behold, I have come before you twice, for I have great zeal and yearning for the king's affairs. Secondly, concern about our people. I am seeing the haughtiness and arrogance of those I mentioned earlier. How much they are troubling our people and do not give them any peace at all. O king, please understand all this and do what you must, taking into consideration our country, our people who are helpless and orphaned. For you are kind to all people. As long as Judah lives, there will be no peace in our land. When the king's friends heard this from him, for they were hostile to Judas, so they stirred up Demetrius' anger against him and sent letters to the king himself, summoning Nicanor, the commander of the army and commander of the elephant row, and ordering him to be killed, his followers to be scattered, and Alcumos to be appointed as high priest of the great temple. The Gentiles who had fled from Judea also came and joined Nicanor, rejoicing over the tribulation and suffering that was coming to the Jews and their followers. When Judas and his companions heard of Nicanor's attack and the triumph of the Gentiles, they threw dust on their heads and cried out to God, who had always been their helper and had always clearly defended their inheritance. Judas proclaimed that everyone should put on their weapons. They immediately set out and encountered them on the plain of Shub. Judas' brother Simon immediately opposed Nicanor, and he was terrified by their haste towards him. When he heard of the heroic deeds of Judas and his companions, their victories, and their dedication to their people and country, he did not want to carry out justice through murder and bloodshed, but rather through the grace of God he specifically sought to give and receive peace through the intercession of Pisidonis, Theodotus, and Matthias. When Judah heard this, he consulted with the people, and realizing that these were only words of peace, decided to make peace with them. They also decided on the day they would meet each other. Each of them wore weapons beneath their robes, and Judas himself ordered the army to stand ready, armed in positions where they could be dangerous in case they suddenly showed any treachery. They met each other very peacefully. They spoke words of peace. Nicanor was in Jerusalem. He did no harm. He sent away the Gentiles who had gathered around him. He had loved Judah dearly. He always dealt happily with him. He begged Judah that he be married to keep the lineage. Judah got married, engaged in worldly affairs too. When Alcimos saw the love and harmony between Judah and Nicanor, he went to King Demetrius and informed him about Nicanor, saying that he had become a stranger to your kingdom and all your affairs, and that he had made Judas, the enemy of your kingdom, his ally and friend. When the king heard this accusation from his enemy, he was furious and wrought in harsh language against the harmony between Nicanor and Judah. He ordered to immediately arrest Maccabee and sent him away bound to Antioch. After reading the letter, Nicanor was exhausted and extremely sad, and he had not changed his disposition towards Judas, who had done nothing wrong. But it was impossible to disobey the king's command. He thought of a reason to arrest him. Maccabee did not look at Nicanor with a former countenance. He was sadder and different than usual. He realized that his behavior towards him had changed. Having gathered together a small community of his people, Judah departed from Nicanor. Nicanor entered the great and holy temple, having learned that Judah had prepared an army. Then the priests were offering sacrifice, and he said to them, "Hand over Judas to me." They said they hadn't seen him at all. They didn't know where he was. He raised his hand in the temple and swore, "If you do not arrest Judas and hand him over to me, I'll make this temple a desolation and tear down the altar. And I'll build a glorious altar for Dionysius in its place." And when he had made this declaration, the priests spread out their hands before the God of heaven and prayed, "O Lord, the Lord of all, who is ever the helper of his people, who has need of nothing, has pleased to choose this place for thy temple, and has made thy dwelling among us. Now, O God, greatly holy, may thou preserve this place and this temple, which has been purified in this time forever. Silence the wicked, It became known to Nicanor that there was a man named Raish, a man of good reputation and a lover of his city, among the elders of Jerusalem. Because of his good character, he was called the father of Jews. He was previously under punishment, but he refused to become a partner in the Jewish people's cause. He had dedicated his mind and body to the preservation of Jewish tradition with prayers and petitions. Wishing to express his hatred for the Jews, 500 soldiers were sent by Nicanor to capture him. He said, "When I catch this man, there will be great pain for the Jews." A crowd gathered and surrounded his residence, trying to open the doors and set them on fire. When he realized that they had come to capture him, he drew his sword and stabbed himself in the stomach, wishing to die free without allowing the wicked and unrighteous to dishonor his dignified old age. Since he was wounded with haste, there was no immediate danger. As soon as the group entered the door of the dwelling, he jumped up and ran, climbed the fort wall, and bravely jumped into the middle of the army. But they saw it and immediately gave way to him. He was still alive, leaping up with religious fervor. Blood was flowing profusely all the while. His wounds were so severe. He ran through the crowd and stood on a high rock. Blood was gushing out from his body, his intestines sticking out in both hands, showing them to the people and calling on God, the one who has power over life and soul, to give them back to him. He left the world. Chapter 15. Nicanor learned that Judas and his companions were near Samaria. The Jews decided to attack them on the day of the Sabbath when there were many people. They said to him in great pain, "Don't do this, don't destroy the innocent. Honor this glorious and holy day perfected by God, the Creator and Maker of all things." That wicked scoundrel asked them, "Did that mighty one in heaven give the commandment about the day of Sabbath?" They told him that he was alive, powerful, and seated in heaven. He is the one who ordered the ritual of Sabbath. The impure and wicked man said to them, "I am also strong on earth. I command you to be armed and do the king's business." Nicanor became haughty and all the more arrogant. When he realized that Judas and his companions were preparing to betray him, he became even more furious. Judas Maccabee, however, stood firm in his hope that God would deliver him, and exhorted those who were with him not to fear the Gentiles who were attacking them and to remember the help they had previously received from heaven, and he comforted them. He said, "Look for the victory that will come to them from Almighty God." He advised them, quoting from the law and the prophets. He reminded them of the heroic deeds and struggles they had wrought in the past. He gave them strength and courage. By pointing out the wickedness of this people and the breach of their promises, he aroused their anger and zeal. Judah armed each one of them not with swords and shield, instead using words that gave them comfort, courage, and strength. He told them in detail about the visions he had seen, saying that they should be accepted and believed. Everyone was happy when they heard this. This is the history of the vision he saw. Judah saw a vision of priest Huniah, who was good, virtuous, humble, cheerful in speech, and highly esteemed, and who had observed all the good things according to the law from his youth, standing with his hands raised in prayer for the entire Jewish people. Again a man appeared, of good old age, greatly resplendent, beautiful to behold, and full of radiance of holiness. Huniah told him that this was Jeremiah, who loved his brothers and prayed often for his people and for the holy city. Jeremiah stretched out his right hand and gave him a golden sword, saying, "Take this sword, for it is a gift from God, with which you will cut down and scatter your enemies." When Judah's companions heard all this, they were comforted by his kind words and became the strongest. Those words had the power to make the listeners strong, noble, and courageous, and to stimulate the minds of their young men. They decided not to rely on preparations for war and the deployment of troops, but to strengthen themselves with good courage for the sake of the city, the holy temple, and the holy place, and to submit themselves wholeheartedly to suffering. They thought little of their wives, children, brothers, and relatives. They were burdened with thoughts about the holy temple. The mental anguish and burden of their thoughts about those living in the city was not small. The elephants stood in their positions in rows, and the cavalry armed stood in their positions. When Judah Maccabee saw the deployment of their army, the strength of the enemy army, the fierceness of the elephants, and the accumulation of weapons, he lifted his hands to heaven and wept and prayed to God, who does wonderful works and wonders, because he knew that victory does not come by the force of arms, and that he will concede victory to whomever God pleases. He prayed thus, "O Lord God, in the days of Hezekiah, the king of Judah, the angels sent by you killed 185,000 of the great army of Sennacherib. Now, O mighty one in heaven, send your good angel before us. Let fear, terror, and trembling come upon them, and let them fall to the ground by the strength of your arm and by your zeal, who have come against your holy people with blasphemy." Judah thus ended his prayer with these words: Nicanor and his army fought with blowing trumpets and tambourines and lyres. Judas and his companions fell upon them with prayers and supplications. They fought with their hands. They prayed in their hearts and cried out to God. They killed 35,000 of their enemies. They were greatly exuberant in the help of God that was with them. After the battle, as they were returning joyfully, praising and singing praises to God, they learned that Nicanor and all his companions had died at the battle, and that his army was in panic and dismay. Judah and his companions sang praises to God in the language of their fathers. Judah, the man who devoted his mind and body to all kinds of suffering for his people and city, who had been the leader and ruler of his people, and who had fought for them all his life, ordered Nicanor to be brought to Jerusalem with his head and hands severed together with shoulder. Maccabee arrived at Jerusalem and gathered his people and priests before the altar. He summoned inhabitants of Fort by way of men. He showed them the head of the wicked Nicanor and the hand that the blasphemer had raised against the temple of God with insolence and arrogance, and ordered them to sever his tongue from head and cut it into pieces and throw it to the birds.